At the end of the last episode, we left a question unanswered. Who would rule Himyar now? The answer was a soldier who never went home. Abraha. He did not stay a governor for long. He became a king, and then he did something no one expected. He looked toward Makkah. In Sana'a, Abraha built a church. He called it al-Qur'an. According to Ibn Ishaq, he intended it to have no equal anywhere on earth. This was not only devotion, it was strategy. Makkah held something Abraha wanted: pilgrimage, and with pilgrimage, trade, wealth, and standing across all of Arabia. Abraha's plan was simple: build a church so magnificent that the Arabs would come to Sana'a instead. Redirect the pilgrimage, redirect the wealth, redirect the loyalty. It is a pattern history repeats. A holy place is never only a holy place, it is also power concentrated in stone. Word of Abraha's ambition reached Makkah, and it was not welcomed. According to the earliest accounts, a man from the tribe of Kinana traveled to Sana'a, entered the church, and defiled it. A deliberate insult, a message: this place will never replace the Kaaba. Abraha was enraged. He swore an oath: he would march on Makkah itself and tear down the Kaaba stone by stone. He gathered his army, and at its center walked an elephant named Mahmud. As Abraha's forces approached, one of his men seized 200 camels belonging to a Maccan elder. His name was Abdul Muttalib, chief of Quraysh, custodian of the Kaaba. He went to Abraha's camp, not to plead for the sanctuary, but to ask for his camels back. Abraha was struck by this. He asked why Abdul Muttalib said nothing of the Kaaba, the very thing he had come to destroy. Abdul Muttalib's answer became one of the most remembered lines in Arabian history. I am the owner of the camels. The house has an owner who will defend it. He took his camels, returned to Makkah, and told his people to leave the city to climb into the surrounding hills. Then he walked to the Kaaba alone, held its door, and asked God for protection. On the morning of the attack, Abraha's forces prepared to advance. The elephant Mahmud was turned toward Makkah. He knelt down and would not rise. They struck him with iron bars. They wounded him. He did not move. But when they turned him toward Yemen, toward home, he rose at once, eager to run. One tradition names the reason. A captured guide named Nufil, forced into Abraha's service, is said to have leaned toward the animal and whispered, "Kneel down or go back to where you came from." Then Nufil fled to the hills to wait with the others. What happened next is recorded in the Quran itself. Surah Al-Fil, the elephant. Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Flocks of birds came, striking the army with stones of baked clay. Those struck fell, the Quran says, like eaten straw. The Quran states this plainly and states that it was a sign. The fuller picture, the bird's appearance, the stones they carried, one in the beak, two in the claws, comes to us through the earliest Tafsir tradition, traced back to Abdullah ibn Abbas, the Prophet's own cousin, and preserved for us by later scholars including Ibn Kathir and Tabari. Two different kinds of source doing two different jobs. The Quran tells us what happened and that God's hand was in it. The Tafsir tradition, generations of scholarship built on companions' own testimony, fills in how it looked. Abraha's army was destroyed. To this day, there is a valley between Makkah and Muzdalifah called Wadi Muwasir. Hadith records that the Prophet himself, passing through it during Hajj, always quickened his pace and never stopped there. Commentators explain why. It was here tradition holds that the stones fell. A place still walked by pilgrims today, carrying a memory of judgment older than Islam itself. Abraha did not die on the battlefield. He was carried back toward Yemen, already failing. According to Ibn Hisham's account, his body broke down piece by piece on the journey home. By the time he reached Sana'a, he was gone. The man who had built a church to rival Makkah, who had marched an army and an elephant across 400 miles of desert, returned to his own capital only to die there. Abraha's sons inherited his throne. We should be honest here too. The sources agree their rule did not last. Within years, not generations, the stability Abraha had built came apart. A Himyarite noble named Saif ibn Dhi Yazan sought help from Persia. The Persian king answered. By the end of that same decade, Yemen was no longer an African kingdom's outpost. It was a Persian province. Aksum's long presence across the Red Sea, begun in episode 2 with Caleb's crossing, ended here, not with a battle remembered in scripture, but with a quiet transfer of power, one empire replacing another. Arabs would come to call this year al-Fil, the year of the elephant. Tradition places it in the same year as the birth of a child in Makkah, a child named Muhammad. We should hold this honestly. Early scholars themselves did not all agree the two events shared the exact same year. Tabari records the disagreement rather than hiding it. What is certain is this: Quraysh never forgot what happened that year. And when the boy born into that same city grew into a man and began reciting Revelation, one of the earliest things he recited was this very story, back to the very people who remembered living through it. Not a story told to convince strangers, a story told to people who were there. In the next episode, we return to Aksum one final time, not as a conqueror, as a refuge. When the earliest followers of that same boy, grown into a prophet, fled persecution in Makkah, they crossed the same sea Caleb once crossed and found shelter in the same kingdom this whole story began with.